Hi, everyone. So my name is Ivan, if you can see me on the small little screen. I am the program coordinator for the Bachelor of Creative Technologies, and also I work alongside with the program coordinator for software engineering. So today I'm going to discuss our program of creative technology software engineering and the way we target that towards video game development. So let's get started on that. Are we waiting for anyone else? No. Okay, cool. Let's get started. So everything that we do in the video games course, we have two degrees. One degree is a software engineering degree, and another degree is actually the creative technologies. Now, if you go study creative technologies anywhere else in the world, you will probably find out that it's a very broad field, right? As a result, some people in some institutions, you might study creative technologies and you'll be doing 3D printing and creating casts and maybe doing some kind of motion capture technology, something like that. The angle that we've taken with creative technologies for us is video game art. And as a result, all of our papers are structured towards trying to develop an artist or creative to work in the video games industry in New Zealand and also all over the world. So it's about making art specifically for the video games industry, if that makes sense. So this is some of the art that we do in year one. Some of our students, some of it is focusing on doing 2D art in Photoshop, so focusing on concept art side of things. And then as we move forward, our students start to create 3D art.
No, I think it's so.
I can hear Dan. Oh, apologies for that.
I'm being naughty and just putting these together,
Cool. So as our students move from year one to year two, they start to learn 3D. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our students understand both the low polygon workflows for games similar to anything mobile or VR related, right? So games that are lower fidelity, maybe a little bit more simplified, but at the same time, they're they're beautiful in their own way. And then when the students move into the second year, what happens there is the students are going to focus on 3D, focusing towards PC games or the console gaming, right? So some of the work right here that you see on the screen, we have the low polygon art of our year one artist student, and then this weapon is modeled in second year in software packages like ZBrush and Substance Designer in order for doing the texturing. This work right here is actually for a third year student doing their own personal project for their end of year submission. So we focus on 3D from year one. So this is the second half of the first year. There'll be some focus on low polygon. And then the second year, our students will be focusing on more high-end 3D. Cool. Now, it's really important for us. It's really important for us that all the students have a unique portfolio. So what we mean by that is that even though we have some classes where we put the specifications in front of the students and ask them to match certain styles, for their personal work and as they're graduating with their portfolios, we want to make sure that everybody coming out of the school is being able to represent their own individual identity and also their own individual art interests in the work that they're doing. So this is all of our third year students submitting their work either for world design or portfolio class. And as you can see, it is quite different. So we don't want everybody coming out with a cookie cutter identical portfolio out of our course, because it's just not going to necessarily achieve the result that we really want. I have a quick question. There's somebody sitting next to me. I'm wondering whether you guys can hear me clearly. Please type in the chat, because I can go to another room. Can you guys hear me? Fine. Okay, awesome. Awesome. So now another thing that I really want to cover. So sometimes games and game art, people are like, I do art, I like playing games. Maybe this is the course for me. Our course is quite technical. You're not going to be able to do drawing for the entirety of 3 years. You're not going to be able to do just 3D for the entirety of 3 years. There are some technical subjects, and all of the artists that we have coming out of our course have the capacity to make their own games. So there's a strong technical component to everything that we teach. It's also understanding about like how to spec your art to make sure that it runs on various devices, but also making your own games, doing your own scripting. We don't have an expectation of you knowing programming, but we do want you to have a certain degree of competency when you're leaving the course to be able to make your own games if you chose to do so. Cool. So the way we approach art, it's relatively technical, and the way we approach programming, it's relatively creative as well, right? So now, again, software engineering as a subject is quite broad, right? There's everything from developing server farms. There's a variety of things that you could do. You know, if you're working in a bank, if you're working in the web development company, if you're running servers, or perhaps you're trying to set up some kind of a payment system for Countdown. If you're doing that, that's all software engineering, but video games are also. So the way we teach software engineering is in the confines of video game development. A lot of the programming courses are focused on C++. Even though there are other languages that do get covered, the core of the subjects that we teach are all in C++. If you understand C++, you'll be able to absorb C#. So language that's used by Unity, for example, C#. Language that's used by Unreal Engine is on C++. So we try to make sure that all of our students in their programming degrees have that understanding of the core fundamentals of programming, because again, you don't really know what kind of studio you're going to end up in if you're going to study with us. So as a result, it's a good catch-all to make sure you've learned something else fundamental as C++. Cool. So our students also focus, our programming students also focus on working on physics and networking as well, networking for games. Game AI, which is not necessarily AI in the way we kind of perceive it now, right? It's not generative art or machine learning. This is more towards to do with how it works in games. And even though you're focusing mainly on game development, the principles that you're learning are going to be applicable in other areas as well. So games programmers are sought after in other fields as well. I used to work in a video games company called Pickpock before coming to teach at media design school. And some of my friends who are programmers went on to work in other fields that are not necessarily games related. So even though this is a games focused course, the principles that you're learning, this is just the front, it's like the best way for you to contextualize the programming things that you're developing. Understanding programming concepts through this lens. But again, the principles are going to be universal. Cool. The two engines that we use at Media Design School is Unity Engine and Unreal Engine. And this is currently the two top engines in the world. Is that going to be the same 3 years from now? If you choose to study with us and then 3 years from now you graduate, we don't really know, right? But at the moment, most of the studios, most of the jobs, most of the games being developed in the world are made with these two engines. There is Go.Engine, Go. There is Game Maker engine as well, which we touch on, but primarily Unity and Unreal. Most 3D games are made with these two game engines, and most game studios are asking in New Zealand and across the world for people to have these skill sets. Cool. We also have a partnership with PlayStation. So we have some kits, PlayStation kits on campus as well. So if you choose to study with us, this is also an opportunity for students who study with us. But please do talk to the sales team whether this option is available to both online or just on campus, because it's one of those things that because it's the development kits are on campus, whether it's possible to remote in to use them or whether the class gets taught slightly differently for students who are remote. That's something for you to investigate further. I can't actually share the detail with you right now. Now, we focus on making sure that everybody in our course, both programmers and artists, understand game design. Now, how many people in the chat have played Monopoly in the past?
See, this is why.
Awesome. Has anybody felt that Monopoly is kind of unfair at a certain point? Like once you start, yeah, it is, right? So the person who developed Monopoly, they wanted to make that game as a criticism of capitalism and the fact that at some point when somebody captures a monopolistic position, the game becomes unfair. So it was a commentary type game, which is probably one of the reasons a lot of people play Monopoly. But then after the dispute you may have had with your family, you're like, "Oh, I'm not playing with you this ever again." So game design is understanding the dynamics that are created between people when they partake in the rules that you create in any particular kind of game. A lot of game design principles that are applied to board game development would also apply to video games as well, right? Making sure the game feels fair, right? So if you're trying to kill a boss in some kind of a game, RPG game, and then that boss, you fight them for 3 hours and they don't drop any loot at all, that would feel very unfair. So what we try to do is try to understand what is fairness. How do you create the dynamic? How do you explain the rules? Maybe some games might have too many rules and they become overly complicated, right? It becomes like an accounting game rather than actually playing out some kind of fictional world. So we get our programming students and our art students to both participate in team projects to create physical board games and also small digital games with each other as well. Cool. Now, this is a degree program. So both of these are degree programs for software engineering and also for art. So we do ask for you to do research, right? And academic reading and writing, but it's always centered towards games. Everything is games focused for us. So looking into level design, right? Looking into academic texts that discuss the navigation in 3D space versus 2D space, how the player might memorize certain spaces and how you can challenge the player. Again, some of the game theory stuff that I was talking about on the previous slide might be featured, and we want you to become well versed in this particular subject matter from an academic standpoint of view, not just a practical point of view, and also to be able to write well about what theories you might have. Not everyone goes into the games industry. You might want to become an academic as well. You might want to write books on the subject of making games. You might want to go indie, but that writing ability is actually quite important in order to be able to communicate much better. Now, we're really big on events at Media Design School as well. So what we try to do, like obviously when everyone was on lockdown, it's kind of put a little dampener on all the events that we could run. But we get our students to organize a game art booth where they sell the game students sell their art at Armageddon. We have girls and games events where we try to encourage more women into the games industry by having high school students participate in these events. And hey, how are you? And yeah, another thing as well, we have end of year showcases that we try to organize and invite industry to. We have a pretty good industry connectivity as well in New Zealand. I can't guarantee if you join, it's going to be something that's happening in the future, but I can say last 5 years, we've had games industry companies come on campus to interview our students to try to get the top of the class, basically. If you graduate from our course and you're top of the class, you have those fundamental skills that are necessary in a game studio, and you also have good people skills. You might get a job. Some of our students get jobs before they graduate. You know, they're like still finishing up classes, but they already signed a contract to work with a game studio. We're, again, other industry engagement things that we do, we try to get regular talks. One of the advantages of us being in lockdown is we couldn't get any talks on campus. So as a result, we had more international speakers coming in via chat, via kind of conference call, sharing their skills and understanding of game development. During this month. Awesome, cool. That's good to hear. Good to hear. But yeah, so we have talks from RocketWorks and from PickPock and other game studios around New Zealand, and also some people from overseas. We have Dean Hall, who actually lives quite close to our campus here. This was during one of the lockdowns, and then we had him kind of remote in and just share some ideas and talk, basically a guest talk, talking about game design and his kind of perspectives and him making his own indie games whilst actually running a AAA studio up here in Auckland as well. We had Mark Fleeg, from senior VFX artist from Destiny 2, also talk about VFX, and the talk at some point turned into more of a motivational, you know, how do you take care of yourself as a creative? How do you make your life more fulfilling? And obviously we're creating these amazing, beautiful worlds in the digital space, but also how do we make sure that we're experiencing enough life in real life to create these enriching experiences as well. So we don't make derivative games where it's like our game is a amalgam of two top selling games in the world. I think the best thing to actually to showcase the strength of our course is the game projects that students produce. So this is a game project called Sky Noon. This project was developed by 6 students, 2 art students. Here we go. 3 art students, 3 programming students. One of the art students went on to work in Wellington at Foodpark, and I think now they're senior character artists at A44 Games. And then one of the programmers went on to work on Halo in the UK. The 2 other programmers and the 2 artists took this game, found a publisher, and then actually started their own studio and had this game running for a few years, I think, or maybe a year. And then at some point they got approached by High Res Studios, studio that made Smite, and they basically got hired as a team to go work in their UK office. And yeah, this is like one of the success stories. It's like it's not just published on Steam. It's like a popular game, started as a student project, but actually went on to become a commercial success as well. You can download this if you want. If you want to buy it, it is a very cool game. This interesting project is called Fortnights. Really, they play on words on another very popular title. But the idea is that it's barbecue food on top of a barbecue, jumping around and trying to skewer each other. So it's kind of like a Smash Bros. Style game. And yeah, and you're just trying to, again, there's like tofu and there's like ham and there's pineapple, and they're just jumping around trying to knock each other off with these skewers off the top of the barbecue. One of the students on the team was actually had like a mechanics background, and they went out and purchased. This is not part of this is not an assignment brief, but they wanted to pitch their game for him and getting a lot better. So they got an old barbecue that was broken, and then they converted it into an arcade so they could take it to events, and they just open it up and people could play their game on an actual barbecue, which is pretty cool. This is another game called Aria, very stylistically beautiful, and again, all of the students from this team went on to getting jobs in various different companies, I think here in New Zealand as well. Relatively small team of students as well. We try to keep our teams relatively small, so everyone can point to a whole bunch of things that they made in that game. Somebody could say, I made all the characters. Somebody could say, I made all the art, all the environments. Somebody might say, I made all the UI and VFX. So we try to keep the teams to about like 6, maybe 3 programmers, 3 artists, sometimes 4 artists, 2 programmers, depending on the size of the cohort. This is a game called Longhouse, again, small team of artists and programmers. It's kind of a city builder Viking wave tower defense, not tower defense, but wave survival game with RTS kind of elements as well. Now, this is an interesting project. We had a team of students who wanted to form a large team of 12, and we recommend them not to do it. So they formed 2 separate teams, one called Simple Text Red and one Simple Text Blue, but they founded a company called Simple Text. And then they started making games all the way from second year. They were making really cool games together. They worked really well together. And then in third year, they formed these 2 separate teams, and they made 2 separate games, both games excellence in their own right. And when the game studio came to check out the third year presentations, they said, hey, we want to talk to them. And we're like, okay, which students? Because usually a game studio might want to hire 1 or 2 students, top of the class. And I said, we want to get the whole team. So they gave basically a game studio in Wellington gave job offers to 12 students altogether. Not all of those students took job offers. Some of them wanted to stay in Auckland, but again, that's another cool game that you might want to check out. And the lecturers in third year don't necessarily have any say in the game design other than providing feedback. So it is still a course. We still want you to pass, and we still have regulations that we're trying to make sure that the game that you're creating hits a certain bar. We'd never say like you have to make a first-person shooter or you have to make a real-time strategy game. That's for the team to decide. The only thing is we want the teams to be able to set their own goals, and we hold them. We hold our students to the goals that they've set. If they don't meet them, then they would fail. But if they scope the project so simple, they're like, oh, we're just doing, I don't know, Flappy Bird. a team of 6 over the course of 32 weeks, we'd probably say that's not a well-scoped project. You need to do something more in order to hit the credit criteria. But again, if somebody said we want to make World of Warcraft or Battlefield 5 or 8 or whatever, I would say that's probably outside of the scope of the size of the team that you have as well. There was a question that I saw pop up, but I didn't answer. Roy Samuels asks, so do you need knowledge of programming in order to take these courses? You don't. So if you're studying software engineering, you need university entrance from from your high school or prior education, showing that you studied the subjects dealing with mathematics and science and you have a mind for that kind of stuff. If you're going into the creative technologies course, you don't need to have any understanding of programming whatsoever, but you will be required to learn as part of the course how to do scripting and how to make your own games. In the first 16 weeks, the students in the creative arts course make their own game in the Game Maker Studio. Is Blender animation needed? In your portfolio, any kind of animation is ideal, right? Especially if you're applying for the games art course, showing animation is important. If you we teach Maya primarily now, even though Blender is a really good package, because most game studios, we ask every year, but most game studios ask for our graduates to have Maya skill set. And I genuinely, personally feel that if you know how to use Maya, learning Blender afterwards is easy. If you know Blender already, you can also learn Maya, but Maya's good at certain quirks. I think people transition from Maya to Blender easier than the other way, to a professional standard. So we focus on Maya primarily. Is that going to be the same 2 years from now? I don't know, maybe. All of our teachers are competent in many 3D packages, but at the moment we focus on Maya. For your portfolio submission, I would recommend including any kind of 3D that you have, even if you're doing if you did some game mods in Roblox, include that in, right? If you did some 3D modeling in Blender or Maya or some other 3D package that like this new one's always coming out. There's some on iPad for sculpting. Include anything and everything that you can have. I'm in CA level 3 and I haven't got yet. Is this an issue? That's a good question to ask our sales team. A lot of times the strength of your portfolio, if you have an excellent portfolio, we could look past it, I think sometimes, but sometimes we can't. It really depends. The main thing that we want to make sure, David, is that you're not, I'm not doing this like sales pitch, come study at MDS, and you go, this sounds amazing, I want to join. And then you join and all of a sudden you feel overwhelmed, stressed out, and you realize it's not for you. So we want to make sure that when you're entering in, you know how technical it is and you have the necessary foundational skills in order to excel in our course. Yeah. The studio answer. Yeah. Yep. As Dan said, just flick us an email. So again, if you're creative or if you're a programmer and you want to do something that games related, I think this is, I would argue, I'm biased in this opinion, but I think this is the best course you can go in Australia and New Zealand to study this kind of stuff. If you play a lot of video games and you think that you want to become like a QA tester and you want to get into the games industry from that side of things, probably too technical and too difficult of a course to do in order to seek that career path. But yeah, if you want to be a game designer, I think this is also a really good place to come and study. Doing a gaming course? Where are you doing a gaming course at the moment? What sort of support MDS provides for students with disabilities? That's a great question. I think it's probably a better one to ask Dan as well. We try to facilitate, so with we provide online education, right, for anybody who can't make it to campus. And I suppose depending on the kind of disability there is, we always try to make sure that it's fair, right? Now we haven't had many students with visual impairment, right? And if we did, I don't really know how we would facilitate for that, just because it's such a visual course. But we had students who had like, they needed special screens or something like that in order to help them. And we tried to do whatever we can But yeah, it really depends. We try to make sure that everybody gets a fair share and trying to make their own games and work in this games industry. But I guess it's yeah, there's a limit, I think, with every institution as to what they can and can't provide. But it's a great question. Yeah.
How you read it, it may mean they could do this, but it also may mean they could take it.
Yeah, I think whatever the specifics are, and I don't want to be asking for anybody's specifics on that, kind of in the live chat. But yeah, do reach out to the school, and we'll just try to see how we can make it work for you. Because I'm genuinely like enthusiastic about trying to get everybody and anybody making games about their passion. Everyone's got like a different lived experience as well, and I think games have a very unique opportunity to enlighten other people as to what that is as well. So yeah, whatever we can do to try to facilitate that will be is what we aim to do. Cool. Are there any other questions? Happy to answer any other questions.
So basically, we could shave 50 credits off, and that's what I've been doing. So for students being stressed and having a hard time, we'll say, "Oh, don't worry about
So
that
we
one.
had a look at this one.
Don't worry about that one. You'll catch those up next year." In fact, you could even take that
Titan
one.
Drum. This is another student game project.
I don't know quite where
Basically, these are deities, and then they try to garner the support of the people living on this particular planet, and they try to bump each other off the planet using their bellies. I actually genuinely think this is the kind of game that if teachers were coming up with game ideas, this is something that would never be come up with a teacher. So all we wanted to do is make sure that students are able to creatively express themselves, and it was quite a zany, interesting, and unique game. And each one of those planets have their own unique gravity. And the more you win, you start getting little supporters running around you, and that shows you how much basically your score, how well you're doing as well. Cool. Okay, this one's arrowing out. I might have a question for you, everyone here. What do all these studios have in common?
It's going to take you a long time to finish, but I think most people don't want to take 10 years to finish a degree. They want to go full time at one point, ease off when they get busy, take a break, come back.
They're all New Zealand-based studios. That's right, David. That's awesome. All New Zealand-based. A44, and that's in Wellington. I think it's in Petone. They moved to Petone now from Upper Hutt. And then we have Grinding Gear Games in West Auckland. We have Rocket Works in CBD Auckland, and I believe it's PwC Tower on the top floor. And then we have Pickpock in Wellington as well, right? Mobile developers. The other interesting thing about all of these studios is all of them have our graduates working there. The games industry at the moment in New Zealand is about 1,000 people, 1,070 people, and a quarter of the games industry are graduates, which is pretty cool for the size of the school that we are. I think it's like a really huge accomplishment for us that we have both programmers and artists working in games industry and making full use of their degrees as well. Now, the question you might ask is like, oh, is there a guarantee of a job? I would never say it's whether you study this or accounting or law, there's never a guarantee of a job after you get your certification. But I will say that every single student who leaves our school can make games by themselves if they wanted to. So the game studios usually try to cherry pick the top of the class, but we had students who, again, some of them were top of the class, some of them weren't, but they went on to make their own games and have success in that area as well. So everyone gets the skills, but job is kind of a harder one. Like we don't really know what the jobs market is going to be in 3 years, so I'm not guaranteeing that side of it. But skills wise, it's a good place to learn your skills. Here's some other game studios that our students work at. We have recently had, now that remote work is becoming more common, we have some students working, one student working on Diablo 4 as a UI artist, 2 students working as props and environments for World of Warcraft updates. A VFX artist at Riot was one of our graduates, and yeah, it's kind of a mixture here. Digital Extremes, a VFX artist as well, Digital Extremes. Yeah, quite a collection, and it's only set to grow, I imagine, right? Now, the question is, can you go straight from school and start working for Blizzard? I would say no. Most of the people who we have working overseas either were international students who went back to their home country and just started working there, like Bohemia Interactive, a student, I think, from Sweden, went back to Europe and got a job there because he was local to Europe. The other students have worked at Grindinger Games and then went on to work for Blizzard, or they worked at digital confectioners and then went on to work at Riot Games, right? So it really is the pathway to international employment is usually through getting some experience in the local game studios. Now, if you are amazing, if you're excellent in what you do and you're world recognized for your skill level, I would say that, yeah, you could probably get a job straight away. But it's very difficult, I think, for HR and international companies to justify hiring a graduate, international graduate, and granting them a visa. So having some experience always helps out. Having a degree helps out as well, because again, that's kind of a, in some regard, is also a checkbox exercise when you're trying to secure employment overseas. Cool. And that's that was the slide from the AI degree. That's something else. But yeah, the if you want to work in games, and you have a portfolio. So sometimes people ask what kind of portfolio we look for artists. For programmers, you don't need a portfolio, you just need university entrance. For artists, showcase some of your 2D skills, showcase some of your 3D skills, and showcase something technical. If you have all of those three, that's amazing. If you have two of those, that's pretty good as well. What I mean by technical is Unity Engine and Unreal Engine are free, and I actually would recommend this for programmers as well, but even though you don't need to do a portfolio, download Unreal, follow some tutorials, upload a video or your game on itch.io, or upload it to YouTube as a video. And when you're applying with your portfolio, saying, hey, I've experimented, I made a character run around, open doors, pick things up, drop them off. And that's the technical side of it. 3D, you just model the sword, you model the shield, you try to model a car, or just that you have an understanding of how 3D packages generally work, fills us with confidence that you are not going to struggle with this course, or 2D. Now, 2D is just drawing, illustration, sprites, animation, anything like that. Now, if you only have one of those, it's okay. But if it's the quality is not there yet, let's say you just have 3D and you're just doing rendered stuff and the materials look a little bit cheap on what you're doing, or the lighting is not quite strong, and then that's the only thing that you have, the portfolio is not very strong, because we don't really know whether it's whether you just literally just follow tutorials on that particular SKU of technical skills. So then it's like, well, can you show us some drawings? Can you start drawings in 3D? And all of a sudden, it's, okay, so they, 3D and you can draw. Wonderful. Somebody's like, oh, I can't draw to save myself. That's okay. I've worked with people in games industry who couldn't draw to save themselves. You will be doing drawing in this course, but then just focus on doing really good 3D and doing something technical. You're a ball rolling around collecting coins, and then you make a high score, right? And the combination of those two, 3D and something technical, makes the portfolio that much stronger. Same thing goes for 2D. If you're just focusing on 2D and your 2D is not necessarily as strong, the portfolio is not that strong. I would recommend always trying to curate your portfolio as well. So whether you come to study with us or not, this is the way game studios judge portfolios. They look at whether there's inconsistencies. So what that means is that if you have amazing illustrations of characters, amazing illustration of environments, and then you have some really kind of scratchy and unfinished life drawings, and you include those in as well, then the art director or the person who's hiring you will look at it and be like, how could this person have such amazing art and not recognize that this art is so different in quality to what they have here? So the curation process is just as important. I would rather see 12 strong pieces than 30 strong and weak and average all mixed in. So try to curate your work the best that you can. Cool. CJ is asking a question. I've been teaching myself Unreal and on and off in last years as I tried to implement some game ideas. That's perfect. Awesome. So showcase, if you want to come study with us, just present that work, show your Blender work, show your Unreal stuff. Yeah. And then we're going to take you to that next level. The other thing I always bring up, this is both for programmers and also artists. Yeah.
Year three fees with
The
us, everything most likely.
um, it's not also about resting on the laurels. I suppose this is kind of a more general thing as well. Not about resting on the laurels of your prior existing skills. So if you're like a highly competent illustrator, professional maybe illustrator already, and you want to learn how to do the technical side of it and 3D side of it, this is a good place for you to come to study. But we also don't want you to be just acing your 2D classes saying, oh, here, like this is easy for me. We would expect you to come to your teachers and say, this is easy for me. How would I be able to challenge myself? And then we say, well, what are you not good at drawing? They're like, well, I'm not good at matching styles. I have a particular style, but I couldn't do something else. And then even though the brief might not specify it, we will make sure to curate the brief for you in a way that it will be challenging for you. Like, we'll, for example, try to match World of Warcraft aesthetic with your with the art that you're doing, right? Rather than just working in the style that you're familiar with. It's always about trying to grow your skills to a higher and higher level. And I, again, even if you choose to just develop your skills by yourself outside of school, that's again setting that bar for yourself and then trying to reach for it, try to challenge yourself. A really good book. I always recommend this during open days. The really good book by Angela Ducksworth called Grit, Grit. She talks about something called deliberate practice. And deliberate practice is practicing something and sucking at it and then trying and trying and trying. It's just like somebody trying to learn a guitar solo. You take a portion, you try to learn it, you try to learn it, and then at some point you get that portion and you move on to the next part. It's not just about strumming, right? Or just having a jam, or just having fun. So whatever that is going to be for you, programming, art, design, try to set that bar a little bit higher. And I think schools are the shortcut in doing that, right? Because a lot of the curriculum is pre-designed in order to try to challenge you in those particular ways. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I'm already proficient in C#. Making games in Unity. Is this something I should include in my application of software engineering? Include that in a letter of intent, and I think that should be enough for you to get in. Yeah. And if you've been making games of your own, again, just showcase that. Maybe upload some of them to itch, or if you don't want to do that, maybe just some videos. Anything that can instill us with confidence that we're not going to be overwhelming you. I think that's the big concern. Some people don't realize how technical and difficult the course is. I know it might not mean much to everyone here, but our course is 420 credits. Most degrees in New Zealand are 360. So over the course of 3 years, it's kind of like a 4-year degree in 3 years as far as content's concerned. And that is quite hard. That is quite hard on programmers and on artists. But when you come out at the end of it, your skills are that much stronger as well. And we kind of try to caution everybody, saying like it is a technical course. You get to meet a lot of people, right? A lot of people who are interested in the same fields as you. As I said earlier, we have a lot of industry connectivity as well. But yeah, showcase as much of your work as you can to get. So to get in, we will have to show evidence of previous work. Showcase your best work. Yeah. So if you're working in a portfolio and trying to get into creative technologies, showcase your best work. 12 of your top 3D models, or your drawings, or maybe some projects that you've done and some kind of interactive projects, anything like that. Photography, I personally won't necessarily recommend including, not because it's not a difficult thing to do. Good photography is hard to do, but it's not as, I don't want to say it's not as relevant. It might be redirecting your visual of your portfolio away from the other parts, right? And I would say the same thing for game developers. Photography is a very important skill for our students graduating, trying to get jobs, but focus on your technical skills of drawing, 3D modeling, and technical. Okay. If you haven't made anything yet, I think you could put together a good, if you have skills, you could put together a good portfolio quite quickly, actually. Just make sure you scope it correctly, right? Don't try to burn yourself out. It's something that we try to avoid our students because it's a lot of work. If you manage your time correctly, it's very doable. if the time is not managed correctly, that's where people start staying up late, and we try to discourage that as much as we can. Cool. But yeah, also jump on ArtStation, check out other artists' work. There's so much good tutorial content out there. I think that one thing that you're not going to learn from tutorials is working with other people, which is, I think, something that our school does really well, getting the people to work in teams and communicate. But again, set a bar pretty high and try to hit that bar, whatever that you're like, I want to draw, like, find an artist out there, right? For me, like Joe Medorea, the creator of Battle Chasers, is one of my idols, I suppose. So I'm aiming for that. Everyone should have a bar that you know that you're trying to get to. Even if you don't get to it, if you get close enough, that's pretty good. Indie horror, awesome. That sounds great. I like that. I like to hear that. Cool. I think we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. We got 1 minute to go. Let's try to get one more excellent question. And is there anything specific you guys look for when it comes to evidence of previous work? Again, so for the art students, we look for proficiency in digital 2D art, 3D art, and/or technical. 2 of those would be great. If you have only one, that's fine, having just one, but it have to be really, like, really strong 2D portfolio. We'll be like, okay, that's clearly this person's put enough time and skill in trying to develop their abilities. If it's just 2D and it's not strong, if it's just technical and it's not strong, or if it's just 3D and it's not strong, then the portfolio would probably say, sorry, we can turn it down, please reapply sometime in the future. Yeah, we have 2 cohorts. We have the larger cohort in February. We try to keep our classes to 24 students to one lecture. So if the class is 48 students, we have 2 lectures on the class. So that's one of our, I suppose, the magic sauce is the fact that we have smaller cohorts. July is a single cohort, and then February is a double. Okay, awesome. Yep. How class will be intense? How many hours? It's full-time study. And so we're expecting 40 hours a week from you. Is it possible to do part-time work at the same time? It's possible. It's not recommended though, because it is a lot of work that you have to do for your course. So the reason I'm saying that, we have students who have done it before, but they all said, oh man, I wish I was doing this full-time. Like, it was full-time study with that. But Auckland is quite expensive, so sometimes it's not a viable option. But yeah, the course is expected full-time study, which is 40 hours in a week. And 20 to 16 of those will be in lecture. The rest of it is, for lack of a better word, homework or work done outside of school. Cool. Thank you for your time. And yeah, if you get an opportunity, come to another open day, be it virtual or on campus, and ask the same questions and see whether answers change. And hopefully we instill you with the confidence to come study with us. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.